This story took place when I was in college. My girlfriend Hillary and I lived in an apartment off campus with our dog, a deaf white boxer named Elsa. She was the sweetest dog, and I always thought her lack of hearing was part of the reason she almost never barked. We adopted her about a year before this, and during that time, I maybe heard her bark once. I worked second shift at the time, and it was always my job to let Elsa out as soon as I got home every night. Our apartment complex was older and dimly lit at night, so Hillary was uncomfortable taking the dog out after dark. I ended up having to work late one night, and I texted her to let her know I'd be a few hours later than usual. Around midnight, she texted and told me the dog needed to go out and asked if I could talk to her on the phone for a few minutes while she went outside. I said yes and gave her a call. I could hear her make her way outside as we talked for a couple minutes. Then, she suddenly stopped what she was saying mid-sentence. After a few moments of silence, I asked if she was still there and if everything was alright. She said she just noticed a man walking near the other side of the building talking on his phone. I jokingly replied, "Well, yeah, it's a big building in a college town. You'll see other people from time to time." I could hear a bit of worry in her voice when she then replied, "No, there's something weird about him. He keeps glancing over here, and I don't think he's actually talking on his phone. I think he's pretending to talk on his phone." I told her that definitely sounds a little suspicious and that she should head inside and I'd let the dog out when I got home. She agreed, and then a couple of seconds later said, "He's coming this way." Now feeling worried myself, I waited to hear the sounds of the squeaky door and loud staircase she had to walk through to get back up to the apartment. But then all I heard was the sound of a dog suddenly going crazy. It was frantically barking and growling and sounded vicious. I completely doubted that it was Elsa, as she was almost always silent. My stomach started to turn and I had no idea what was happening. About 10 seconds later, I could hear the door open and footsteps running up the staircase. I was yelling on the phone to Hillary asking what was going on and if she was alright. I heard a door slam and could hear her breathing heavily on the other end of the phone. When she caught her breath, she got back on the line and said that when she started to head toward the building, the man shoved his phone in his pocket and started walking much faster toward her, as if he was trying to reach her before she got to the door. He was behind some cars, and when he got around the last one, that's when Elsa seen him and sprung into action. She said Elsa lunged in front of her, hair standing up, showing her teeth and barking like crazy. I told her I heard all of that clearly on the phone. She said as soon as she did that, the man stopped and ran into the woods at the edge of the property. Hillary was certain that he was coming after her, but also put a wrench in his plans. We both couldn't believe how aggressive she became in that situation because she was one of the sweetest dogs we'd ever seen. But her protective instincts kicked in and we were both incredibly grateful. Hillary called the police and reported the incident, but the man was never found. I don't know what he planned to do that night, but we never heard Elsa bark like that again during the years she was with us. I was around 10 years old when this happened. I lived with my family in a ranch-style house in a quiet neighborhood. One Saturday night, we all went to bed around 11 p.m., except for my dad, who stayed up in the living room watching TV. I remember that the patio door was open in the kitchen, and the warm summer breeze was coming in through the screen door. My bedroom was at the end of the hall, and I like to leave my door open at night. I could kind of secretly hear and see what was going on in the other rooms sometimes. From my bed, I could see down the hall and into the living room a bit. The kitchen was right next to it, but there was a partial wall that divided the two rooms. I fell asleep for a while, but I woke up at some point in the middle of the night. I wasn't sure if I heard something or not, and I looked back at the clock to see what time it was. It was about 2:30 a.m. I looked down the hall and could still see the glow of the television in the dark living room. It wasn't uncommon for my dad to stay up this late, so I thought he must still be up watching TV. Then, I heard the patio screen door slowly slide open, and I could hear soft footsteps in the kitchen. I looked down the hall, and I could just barely see an arm and a shoulder come into view from where I was laying. It was dark, but there was definitely someone in the kitchen, but I couldn't see who it was. This actually didn't seem unusual though, because my dad enjoyed the outdoors and would sometimes sit out on the deck at night. I just assumed it was him coming back inside, and I fell back asleep shortly after. The next morning, I woke up to some commotion in the kitchen. I could hear my mom down the hall saying something like, "No, it was right there. I know I left it on the table." My sister and I both walked into the kitchen wondering what was going on. When my parents saw us, they paused for a few moments and my dad asked, "Have either of you seen your mom's purse?" We both said no. My mom was clearly getting worked up at this point and said, "Well, where is it then?" She wandered around the house looking everywhere for it, and even stepped outside on the back deck at one point. When she walked back inside, I could see her stop all of a sudden as she was inspecting the screen door. There was a small cut in the screen that ran parallel to the handle in the center. She asked, "What is this?" My parents started piecing together what had happened. They were realizing that someone must have cut the screen to reach their fingers in and flip the lock on the inside. Then they could easily open the door and snatch the purse off the table a few feet away. I told my parents I woke up around 2:30 a.m. and that I heard someone open the door, and I heard them in the kitchen. I said, "I thought it was Dad." He said that he fell asleep on the couch shortly after everyone went to bed and didn't wake up until around 6 a.m. My dad called the police to report the burglary after realizing what had happened. The cops showed up about an hour later and told us that 3 other houses in the neighborhood reported items being stolen last night. I didn't feel safe in the house for a while after that. It was really creepy knowing that someone just walked into the house while my dad was sleeping on the couch several feet away. We later found my mom's purse in the backyard under a small utility trailer. Everything was still in it except for the cash she had in her wallet. This happened a couple months ago, but here's the backstory. I'm a 20-year-old girl. When I was 16, I dated this guy for a few months named Mike. I met him through a mutual friend. I didn't really know much about him at the time because he went to a different school. We started talking and eventually hanging out, and things were going pretty well. We decided to make things official after about 2 months, and that's where things started to change. I started to see a different side of him. He started to get pretty controlling. He would get really mad when I would hang out with friends, and if I even mentioned one of my guy friends, well, he'd get really mad and try to tell me to stop talking to him. But he kept getting weirder. There were a couple times when I was getting home from practice and he was all of a sudden right behind me when I was pulling into my driveway. He would say that he happened to be in the area and he wanted to see me, but I thought it was odd. I never saw where he came from, but I wondered if he was parked waiting in the neighborhood for me to drive by or something. He would also say really creepy things like, "I love watching you sleep." I wasn't allowed to stay overnight with him, so that comment didn't make sense. I asked him what he meant. He sort of backtracked saying, "Oh, I meant I can't wait to be able to sleep overnight with you." I wanted out of the relationship at this point. It turned out that his dad was being transferred to the other side of the country for work, and he ended up having to move anyways. It was good timing because it made it a lot easier to end the relationship. Once he moved, we kept in touch for a bit, but we slowly stopped talking, which I was fine with. Fast forward to a few months ago. Mike contacted me on Snapchat one day and said he was going to be in town in a few weeks to visit some family. He asked if we could get together. I kindly told him that I had a boyfriend and I didn't think it was a good idea, but I said I wished him well and I hope he had a safe trip. He never responded, and after a couple days, I forgot all about it. A few weeks later, I was laying in bed watching Netflix on my laptop. I had my windows open about halfway to let some fresh air in. I thought I heard a faint sound outside my window. It wasn't very loud, so I assumed it was the wind or something. I kept watching my show and I thought I heard something again a few minutes later, but this time it was louder. I paused the show and listened but didn't hear anything else. Nothing else happened that night and I eventually went to sleep. The next night, I was sleeping and I woke up in the middle of the night. I had this feeling that something woke me up, but I didn't know what. I laid there for a while until I fell back asleep. 2 days later, I woke up in the morning and checked my phone as I always do. At around 4:30 a.m., I had received a couple text messages from a number I didn't recognize. I opened them to see what they said. The first message said, "It was great to see you." The second message was a photograph. It was a picture of me sleeping, and it looked like it was taken from outside my bedroom window. I felt sick to my stomach as I replied to the number, asking who it was. I got an error message saying that the message was undeliverable. I felt nauseous as I sat there wondering who would do something like that. Then, I remembered that Mike told me he was going to be in town. I went to send him a snap, only to find that his account was no longer there. I checked other social media accounts as well. He had either blocked me or he deleted them. I told my parents about it and we went and reported it to the police. They apparently weren't able to do a whole lot about it, but told us to let them know if anything else had happened. Nothing has at this point, but I bet that it was Mike. What really creeps me out though, is thinking back to when we were dating and he told me he liked watching me sleep.